Hello and welcome to this video overview of LBLighting and the weather system that ships with Landscape Builder. I'm using Landscape Builder 1.3.7, so my screens may be a little different from yours if you're using a newer version. So here I've just set up a basic landscape, and I've also added a camera so that we, in the game view, can see any changes that are made. So the fastest way to add LBLighting to your scene is just to open the Landscape Builder window, as I've got it open here, go to the Landscape tab, and in Scene Settings you should see a button that says Set Up Scene Lighting. So this Remove Directional Lights button, if you've got it turned on, if it finds any directional lights as are usually added by Unity into your scene by default, it will get rid of them so that you can make way for the LBLighting. By default, I just usually have it on, but if you've got any lights that you don't want to remove, then turn it off. So I'm just going to add my lighting to the scene. So to use LBLighting, just go into the scene window and just click on the object that says LBLighting, and then click on the inspector to view it. So there are two setup modes in LBLighting. There's simple, and then there's advanced. Simple is almost always what you want to use. It's got most of the settings you need, and it's just a few more complicated ones that are in advanced. So advanced is only really if you've got some very specific needs for your scene and you want full control over what happens at every point in the day. So for instance, you've got this fog color gradient here. So if you want, I don't know, red at 5 o'clock in the morning, then you can have red at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's up to you. But for now, I'm just going to use simple because, as the name says, it is simple and it's easy to use. So in LBLighting, you've got 7 different tabs which you can show and hide using these buttons. So firstly, the skybox settings, then there's general lighting setting, ambient light and fog settings, celestials, weather, on-screen clock, and the screen fade settings. There's also this button down here called Update Lighting Preview. So when you click it, any of your settings up here then get applied and the lighting adjusts to fit them. So first of these tabs is the skybox settings. So you've got 2 skybox types you can use. You can either use the procedural skyboxes that by default you ship with Unity 5. You can set the skybox material here. Or you can use the 6-sided, legacy skyboxes that were more prominent with Unity 4. So if you just click the Add Skybox button here, you can add a new skybox and choose a material for it. I've got one here. And then if you update the lighting preview, you can obviously have your skybox there. So you can add as many skyboxes as you like for the different times of day, and then it will transition between them, and it will show that skybox between the transition start time and the transition end time in 24-hour time. But for now, I'm just going to use the procedural skyboxes, which are on by default. And it will just use the default LB skybox material we've set up. So next we've got the general lighting settings. So in LBLighting, there are 2 types of lighting modes. There's dynamic and then there's static. So static mode basically means that over time nothing changes. The simulated time stays the same throughout your entire game in this scene. So for instance, if you had the game start at a simulated time of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it'll always be 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then if you choose dynamic, then you get a fully dynamic 24-hour day-night cycle which transitions over all those times and changes the lighting conditions to match accordingly. So I'm going to use dynamic so we can see some of that. So if I just go into the game view, we can see that the basic lighting has been set up. So the first thing we can change here is the sun intensity that I'm going to go over in this video. So if we change the sun intensity and then update lighting preview, by increasing it, we make the sun light more intense. So that's pretty intuitive. It maps to basically what you'd see in a normal light object in your scene. So if I make it darker, it becomes darker in the scene. So I'm just going to leave it at 1. So another important thing we have here is the start time of day. So basically it's just the time of day that the game starts in, and it's measured in 24-hour time. So 12 here just means 12 o'clock, the midday time. So if I change it to, I don't know, 16.5, that maps to 4:30 in the afternoon. So if I update the lighting preview, you can see that the sun, although it's behind a tree, is moved to a more better position to simulate 4:30. So the fact that it's behind a tree is probably a little annoying. So that brings us to another setting we can change, the sun orbit rotation. So the sun orbit rotation is basically angle measuring where the sun sets and rises. So for instance, maybe I want the sun to come down where I'm waving my mouse around over here. So I can change the rotation about, I don't know, 15 degrees back towards the left. And now if I click update lighting preview, the sun has moved in the position between these two trees, so we can actually see it go down. So now if I go into the game and run it, we can see that in real time the sun is moving and the shadows are changing. The thing is, it's a little slow, so we can't really see it. So another setting we can change is the day length. And the day length is basically an expression in seconds for how long the entire day cycle lasts. So at the moment it's 1440 seconds. I'm going to change that to 144, which is 10 times that as fast. So now if I just click play again, we can see that the sun is moving a lot quicker, and so are the shadows. And in just a small amount of time, we can see a sunset arrive. So the day length value is what you change for how quickly your day cycle progresses. So I'm just going to leave it at 1440. Next we have the sunrise and sunset times. They're basically just the times in 24-hour time at when sunrise and sunset happen. So that's basically all that you need to know really for general lighting settings. Next we have the ambient light and fog settings. So all of them are grouped into day and night. So day, anything that says day is that color or value when it is at midday. It's also for a range around that value, but that doesn't matter so much at the moment. That you just think of it as midday, and the night is whatever that value is at midnight. So day ambient, the ambient light value is basically just what you see here in the lighting tab as default in Unity's ambient color. It just gets set and transitioned to between those two times. So next we've got the day, night, and fog color and density. So one thing you might notice is that this scene doesn't have any fog in it. That's because on my camera over here we've got it set to the rendering path of deferred. So if you know anything about deferred lighting, you might know that in deferred lighting, fog doesn't affect opaque objects. You need an image effect for it. So in Landscape Builder we have a solution for this in the weather. So if you click the use weather button, by default it'll add some image effects to your cameras. In the lighting you can choose which cameras it affects in here. Just clicking get cameras will just by default try and find the ones it thinks you'll be using. And then if we go onto this camera, it's added this LB image effects script, which has some fog settings, some cloud settings, and some screen space reflection settings. So if you want to know more about what these settings do, just have a look in the manual. It's got some descriptions of what the settings do and how you can change them. Also, if you haven't already noticed, pretty much everything in Landscape Builder, if you just hover over it, it will show a tooltip for it, which should, if you're just trying to jog your memory, should help you a bit. So back to the lighting. Now that we've got some fog, we can change the fog density. So if I just make density 10 times greater a day, maybe it's closer to 9 actually, make it 10 times greater all the time. Now if we update the lighting, we'll notice that the fog has become a lot more dense. So I might make it even more dense just to show. And now if we make it that dense, it becomes very dense indeed, and we can barely see anything. Now if you think, oh actually I've forgotten what the settings originally were and can't remember them, that's fine as well, because we've got this reset button in each of the tabs. So if you just wanted to go back to what the default settings were, just click the reset button. And that will set these back, and then we can click update lighting preview again to come back to where we were. So the last thing in this tab is the fog color for day and night. So basically we can go in and change what that fog color is at that time. So for instance, if I want it to be more of an orangey fog, I don't know, maybe it's on some far-flung planet somewhere, and then we click the update lighting preview again, the fog color has changed to a weird orangey color. So I'm just going to reset that, because I don't really think orange fog is particularly realistic, but whatever you want really, I guess. So next we have the celestial settings. So basically celestials will allow you to add stars and the moon into your scene. So to do that is pretty easy. Just click use celestials, and you can define a main camera for the celestials to use, and the number of stars you want displayed over the entire night sky and the size of those stars. So you can adjust those. You can also choose whether you want a moon to be used, which will display a moon object somewhere in your sky, and you can choose the intensity that the light it uses, and the orbit rotation as same as the sun, and also the size of the moon. So to get all this working, just click build celestials, and then if we update the lighting preview, go back to where we were. And now if we change the time of day to something more like 9 o'clock at night, and update the lighting preview, we can now see that the stars have appeared in the sky. So if we want, we can make the stars a bit bigger. So now if we build celestials, we can see that the stars appear a lot larger in the sky, which may not be realistic, but if you're making a more artistic game, that might be what you want. Or we can make them smaller, and build them. And now they might be a bit small, maybe a bit bigger than that. Oh, and now not many of them are actually visible because of how small they are. So we'll just go back to what we had before. So that's basically what we use with the celestial settings. And next we have the weather settings, which you saw before. We've got your image effects for the cameras. We've also got cloud settings and state settings. So if I just go to the day, so this is a bit more visible, you can see that there are a few clouds in the sky. That's controlled by this. So render clouds turns the clouds on or off, and these colors here define the color of the clouds at day and night. I'm going to make it a bit earlier in the day so we can see a bit better. So also controlling how the clouds and other miscellaneous things to do with the weather work, we've also got these weather states. So Landscape Builder's weather system operates off these weather states. By default, you have one weather state, clear. So you define weather states such as clear, stormy, cloudy, foggy, attack, and then Landscape Builder can automatically transition between these states, or you can activate the transitions in code as described in the manual. So I've got one weather state clear here, but now I can add another one. So I don't know, I'll just call this stormy maybe. And we've got a few settings in here. We've got cloud density and cloud coverage, which control the density of the material making up the clouds and how much of the sky is covered by the clouds, respectively. So I'm going to make these clouds fairly dense, and I might make the coverage a bit higher as well. And we can also add rain. So in the clear state, there's no rain strength, but in stormy, we want there to be a lot of rain. So adjusting the rain strength will make more or less rain appear. So I'm going to make that as much as we can because we want lots of rain in stormy. And also there's this fog density multiplier value. So this is maybe in the stormy state, you might want more fog appearing. So we can, for instance, make it 30 times more foggy. So usually, this might seem a lot bigger than you might expect you need, but because of how fog is exponentially generated based on distance, you might have to make this more, in fact, than you'd expect. So we've also now got wind strength, which is how strong the wind is. So if you've got a wind zone and you click the Use Wind Zone button up here, then you can assign your wind zone, and that wind zone strength will be determined by the wind strength in the state you're in. It also controls how fast the clouds move across the sky. So I'm going to set that a bit higher for a stormy thing. So now if I update the lighting, we can now choose the start weather state. So the start weather state is like the start time of day. It's the time of day, the weather state that the game will start in. So here we've got clear as the default. We've got stormy, which is the new one I've just added. And we've also got random, which would mean that the state is randomly chosen. So I'm just going to click stormy so we can see what we've done. And now if I update the lighting preview, there's a lot more fog, and the clouds are obscuring pretty much all of the sky. Also, the cloud shadows are making the ground a lot darker. So there's also a setting for automatic transitions, as I said, to choose whether the weather states are automatically transitioned between or you call them through code. And if you've got it turned on, these values are the minimum and maximum time in seconds that transitions take to complete. Also, in each state, you've got minimum and maximum values for how long that state stays in before it transitions. So that's pretty much all of the weather settings. So I'm just going to go back to clear for now so we can see what we're doing. So the last two things we have are the on-screen clock settings and the screen fade settings. So the first setting here is the display screen clock. So this is basically a debug thing that allows you to work out what time it is in real time that it's being simulated as. So if I click update lighting preview, it shows me here that it's 4:23 in the afternoon. And now if I just click play, you can see the clock time value changing in real time. This is helpful if you want to coordinate sunrise and sunset events, for example, with some other game event that you created yourself. And we've also got the screen fade settings. So for instance, if you want to fade the game in from black at the start, you could click on fade in on wake, and then this fading duration is how long the fade takes. So I'm going to turn that up to 20 seconds, for instance. And now if I click play, the screen starts dark and gradually brightens up to what it was originally, although here it will take 20 seconds. And so that is basically all of the stuff you need to worry about in the simple setup mode. There's also the advanced setup mode, which I'll just go through quickly. Here we have a fog color gradient. So you might have noticed that in simple, we only get to specify the day and night fog color. Now, this isn't particularly helpful if, for instance, you want fog to be blue in the day, black at night, but in the evening, for instance, you want it to be a nice yellowy color to represent the sunset. So here we can specify in the gradient what color appears at each time of day. So I've got one set up right here with yellow tinges at sunrise and sunset. So now if I go to a nice sunset time of about 6 o'clock and I update the lighting preview, we notice that the fog color has now changed to be a bit more like the skybox and is showing a bit more of this yellowy tinge. There's also things like the fog density curve, which gives you the control over the fog density at all times. It does not have to just change between day and night fog color. You can also maybe at like midday make the fog transition to be a lot more dense. And ambient light is also a gradient, as with the fog color. And you can also change the sun intensity as a curve instead of just a fixed value that transitions automatically based on day and night. And that's pretty much it for the lighting. If you have any other queries about stuff, first look in the manual, which describes a lot of these settings in more detail. And if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to contact us in the forums to ask about what you need help with. Thank you.